We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. You know, we've told you for a week or so now, we're going to be going in the mornings here during football season. Back in the day, about 2-3 weeks ago, we were going 5-6 p.m. Eastern time in the evenings. By that time, I think you're going to be wanting to watch Cowboys-Eagles tonight. So fun show, loaded show, busy show, full show, basically what you need to know. We're going to preview week 2. Oklahoma, Michigan, is the headliner. Kentucky, Ole Miss, on and on. From there, it keeps getting worse for Kalen Deboer. Boosters turning on him. And oh, by the way, the buyout all of a sudden has become an interesting topic. It's not quite as complicated or maybe negative in a Bama light as much as you think. We'll do, by the way, I'll make a Super Bowl pick as we do our picks for the week, I should mention as well. And then we'll do a little college hoops. Did you see this crazy Dan Hurley wants to retire story or thought about it? We'll discuss that. And then I'll say this from a basketball perspective. Caleb Holt, one of the top players in America, visiting Kentucky this weekend. I think it's going to be a very interesting recruitment, so we'll dive into that. Busy show, fun show. Before we get started, couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We appreciate your support. We're about this close to 60,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Share with a friend. We're also available on Apple and Spotify as well. Before we get to the show, we should also mention our friends, our partners, the official ticketing app of the Aaron Torres Pod. I am, of course, talking about SeatGeek. Okay, so bottom line is this. You want to go to a game this weekend. Maybe you're a Kentucky fan. You want to go to the Ole Miss game. Maybe you're an Oklahoma fan wanting to go to the Michigan game. Maybe you're even an Alabama fan saying, I bet I could get cheap tickets for this UL Monroe game this weekend. Well, guess what? You could get them even cheaper thanks to SeatGeek and our partners and the special offer that they have for the Aaron Torres Pod, okay? So first of all, SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Thing that I love about SeatGeek, they rate every ticket 1 through 10. They'll tell you if the seat isn't good, right? There's a green dot, there's a red dot. Green means go ahead and purchase. Red means maybe that's one that you should go ahead and stay away from. And that's the best part about SeatGeek. No gimmicks, no games, just wanting to get you the best seat in the house. You know what else they want to do? They want to get you the best seat in the house at a discount because they have a very special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. How about this? If you go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. So you want those last-minute tickets to the Kentucky Ole Miss game, last-minute tickets to Oklahoma, Michigan. Oh, by the way, you want to go to shows, concerts, doesn't just have to be college football. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. As we get to our week 1 picks, should also mention the lines are provided by our casino and hotel partner. We love Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. Okay, producer Matt and I were out in Vegas just a few days ago at the Circa Casino in Las Vegas. It's beautiful. That's the only place to watch a game if you're in Las Vegas. But if you're on the East Coast, remember, Circa has opened that new sports book, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. Best place to watch the games, best place to check everything out, best place, by the way, in this world where you need every app. You need the new ESPN app, you need Peacock, Paramount. No, you don't. You got to go to the Circa Casino and Sportsbook, Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky, right on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. I've told you, if you go to that sportsbook, tag us at Aaron_Torres so we know you made it. And I'll be doing some live shows there as football and basketball season roll on. Thank you to Circa. With that said, busy Thursday afternoon in sports. It's still morning, but we're getting to afternoon. No more time to waste, so let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, we're headed into week 2. Let's get to our preview and picks. Quick reminder, all picks are available. Aaron Torres online. My full write-up is available there. Also should mention, we do the college football betting pod, so make sure to check it out. Week 2 picks. Let's dive in. Lines provided by Circa Sportsbook and Casino. The Circa Sportsbook, let's start with Oklahoma, Michigan. This is the big one, the top 20 matchup. We're coming off of a week where we had one matchup. We had 3 matchups of top 10 opponents, only one matchup of top 25 opponents. But let's go ahead and dive in. Michigan at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a 4.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. The over-under set at 45.5. It was actually 46.5 a day ago. I'm just going to be real. I do like the under of 45.5 in this game. So first of all, listen, I get it. I understand this game is about the quarterbacks. John Mateer, arguably the best transfer quarterback available, comes with his offensive coordinator from Washington State. The other side is obviously Bryce Underwood, NIL baby, number 1 player in the country, turns down LSU, ends up at Michigan. But when I think about this game, it's still to me about the defenses, because as bad as those offenses were last year, as much as the reason that Mateer and Underwood are on their respective campuses is because the quarterback play was not good enough at either school last year, I also look at it conversely. Both defenses were really good last year. I know Michigan specifically lost 2 first-rounders off that defensive line, but they didn't miss a beat in week 1, okay? And so you look at it from the Michigan perspective when they're on defense. Listen, they were really good against the pass against New Mexico. I know New Mexico, whatever, it's no big deal. And I also think it's worth noting, Oklahoma did not run the ball last week particularly well against Illinois State, about 103 yards of total rush offense. Oh, by the way, John Mateer had about a quarter of that. Oklahoma didn't run the ball running into that tough Michigan defense. And then I think when Michigan has the ball, is Sharon Moore in the first big game of his freshman's career going to throw Bryce Underwood to the Wolves against the Brent Venables defense? I just don't see it. Bottom line, I think, in my opinion, this game has, 20-17, 17-14, 20-14, 20-10 written all over it. I know the 45.5 is not much, but I do like the under in this game. Let's keep it going. The other big game in college football this weekend, season opener in the SEC in beautiful Lexington, Kentucky. By the way, you need last-minute tickets, SeatGeek.com. Use promo code Torres to get $20 off. But let's go ahead and dive in, and let's go ahead and talk about Kentucky hosting Ole Miss, not only an SEC opener, but all of a sudden, this is a big revenge game. Remember, last year, Kentucky goes to Ole Miss last Saturday in September. Kentucky had already taken 2 SEC losses. They stun Ole Miss. Ole Miss basically never really recovered from that game. If you remember, Ole Miss missed the college football playoff, and they basically didn't have a leg to stand on. When you started comparing resumes, you figured out they lost to Kentucky. Kentucky, on the other hand, it was their only SEC win of the season. So a lot at stake here, sort of a revenge game. I'll be real. I think it's actually closer than people expect, and this is another one. I do think the under of 50.5, that line courtesy of Circa Sportsbook, I think it's the right play. By the way, that's Circa Sportsbook in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky, by the way. All right, so as far as this game, listen, I think everyone's going to say, oh, Kiffin's going to run up the score. Listen, history tells us that Kiffin against Kentucky, for whatever reason, these games are always close and competitive, okay? These teams have played 3 times in the Kiffin era. In Kiffin's first year, 2020, during COVID, they won by 1 in overtime against Kentucky. The next year, Will Levis, probably one of the better games he played, goes to Oxford and gets a win, 22-19. Last year, as I said, Kentucky wins by 3. So they've played 3 times in the Lane Kiffin era at Ole Miss. There has not yet been a time where this game is decided by more than 3 points. And so I think it's close. I think it's low scoring. Listen, at this point, we know what Mark Stoops' game plan is. He wants to run the ball. He wants to control the clock. He wants to put pressure on that Ole Miss offense to kind of make plays when they're on the field. And basically, the best way to slow down a great offense is to keep them off the field. And so the more that I look at it, listen, Mark Stoops, what is this, year 12, he's not changing who he is. And oh, by the way, in the opener against Toledo, they ran the ball nearly twice as much as they passed it. 43 rush attempts, 23 pass attempts. So I just bring it up. a tiger doesn't change its stripes, a leopard doesn't change its spots, and Mark Stoops ain't throwing the ball all over the field. Close, low scoring. I think Ole Miss wins transparently. I think Kentucky could pull off the upset again, but I'm just going to go ahead and take the under. Again, this one feels like 24-14, 21-17, but I do think the under of 50.5 in the Circa Sportsbook is a very good play. Really quickly, a couple other ones because there aren't a ton of marquee games this week, but let's go to Gainesville, Florida, right? Florida's schedule really ramps up starting next week at LSU. Florida's next 4, by the way, at LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, at Texas A&M. So it's going to get a lot tougher. They host South Florida. South Florida got that big win over Boise in week 1. By the way, should mention the spread, according to Circa Sportsbook, 17.5 points. Florida is a favorite. The over-under is set at 56.5. I'll just be transparent. I actually like Florida to win and Florida to cover a big number of 17.5. Bottom line is, look, I think everyone's going to go back to that USF win over Boise. Great win, season opening win. You don't want to dismiss it. My counterpoint to that would be, if you actually watch the game, a lot of weird stuff happened. Boise had over 400 yards of total offense. How about this? 10 more first downs than USF, and they lost by 17 points. I don't know how that happens. And so I just bring it up because USF, great win. I don't know that it translates, especially in the swamp. And I'll say this. I know Florida played something called East Texas A&M. To quote Shaq, East Texas A&M, I'm not familiar with your game. I apologize. But the counter to that is, East Texas A&M was SMU, who we're going to get to next. But they played Long Island. And I definitely was not aware Long Island had a football team. I bring it up to very simply say, Florida held Long Island under 100 yards of total offense. DJ Lagway in this game was 15 of 18 passing with 3 touchdowns and said after the game, I need to be better. So Florida, they're at home. O-line, D-line are going to dominate this game. My only concern is I could see the scenario of a backdoor cover. Let's call a spade here. If Florida's up 31-10 with 10 minutes to go, do they pull the starters getting ready for LSU next week? I think it's possible. And if that happens, then what does it mean for the backdoor cover? It's possible. I still like Florida to cover the 17.5. 2 other quick picks. By the way, we'll do deeper dives next week when we have LSU, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Notre Dame among the headliners next week. A couple other games, Baylor, SMU. I just mentioned East Texas A&M. That was who SMU played last week. SMU wins 42-13. The crazy part about it was, for SMU, 2 defensive touchdowns, 1 special teams touchdown. So the whole offense only put up 21 points against East Texas A&M. Well, now they're hosting a Baylor team coming off a loss. SMU, the 2.5-point home favorite, over under 64.5. I'll be real, I like Baylor. I think it's a little bit of desperation on Baylor's part. You started 0-1. You don't want to start 0-2 as you get closer to Big 12 play. But my counter to that is pretty straightforward. I thought Baylor looked good. Listen, I don't want to dismiss what Auburn did. Hugh Freeze took enough heat during the offseason. He deserves to celebrate a big week 1 win. But let's look at that game realistically. It was a 1-score game until there was about 4 minutes left, and it was a 1-score game after Auburn had a special teams touchdown. So that game, 1 or 2 plays easily could have swung it the other way, easily could have had Baylor win that game. And how do we feel about this game? Sawyer Robertson was excellent going up against an SMU defense that I think is a little hit or miss with a lot of portal talent coming in. I do like Baylor to cover the 2.5. I like them to win, but I'm just going to take them plus 2.5. Last game, the big noon game. Listen, we got to give a shout out to the Cy Hawk Trophy. We're not spending much time on the Cy Hawk Trophy, okay? And that is because the bottom line is not a lot to talk about in this game. Iowa State is a 3-point home favorite. The over-under in this one is 41.5. Well, I solely bring it up to just say this. Sometimes you don't got to overthink these things. Go ahead and take the under in this game of 41.5. I know the number is minuscule, but here is the bottom line. Go ahead and look at the last couple games these teams have played. Last year, Iowa State wins 20-19, 39 total points. The year before, Iowa wins 20-13, 33 total points. The year before, Iowa State wins 10-7, 17 total points. 5 of the last 6 games. How about that? 5 of the last 6 games have gone under 41.5. It's also worth noting, I think this is kind of interesting as well. In those 6 games, The road team has actually won 5 of them. So keep that in mind as you make your decisions on this game. But I just think the under is the easy play here. Really quickly, before we get to the latest in as Kalen Deboer and Bama turn, do quickly want to give my Circa Survivor pick of the weekend. So again, Circa Survivor is our official casino and hotel sponsor. If you're in Kentucky, if you're in Tennessee, if you're on that border, Mint Kentucky Downs is officially a Circa Sportsbook. Go ahead and check it out. But while I was in Vegas, I did sign up for the Circa Survivor Challenge. It's not too late to sign up, by the way. If you're in Nevada, you do have to be in Nevada. But Circa Survivor, I got to pick a team to win every single week, including, by the way, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of that. So we're going to go ahead and tag our CFB picks with my Circa Survivor pick of the week. And again, I just got to pick one team to win, but anyone who's been in a Survivor pool knows it's not as easy as people think. And I think for the first few weeks, if I can survive week 1, week 2, week 3, I'm going to give out these picks. You know, once we get to like week 15 and we're down to a couple people and whatever, if I'm still in it, knock on wood, I might not give out this pick publicly. But let's give my Circa Survivor week 1 pick. I'm taking the Denver Broncos to beat the Tennessee Titans. Listen, Denver's a 7.5-point favorite. They better win this game. I'll be real. Am I a little nervous given that it's Cam Ward's first career start? Am I a little nervous? There's not a lot of tape in the NFL on Cam Ward. Yeah, a little bit. Could I even see the scenario listen, I don't even want to speak it into existence, okay? But Cam Ward's a stud. But I look at this game. Remember, Denver has lost the last 2 season openers. I think last year they started 0-2, 0-3. I think they come out hot. And that defense is elite, right? Patrick Surtain's the best cornerback on the planet. Obviously, you know, you look across the board at the rest of that roster. The thing that also stood out to me, by the way, they were number 6 in the NFL in turnover margin. They take care of the football. They force a lot of turnovers. We'll see if they can have success against Cam Ward, who, listen, is great, but at times gets a little bit loose with the ball. Nick Bonito, by the way, just signed a long-term extension right as we got on air here. So just bring it up to solely say that is going to be my week 1 Survivor pick. If you want to root for Torres, you know, we're going to be watching that Broncos Titans game closely in the 4 p.m. Eastern window on Sunday afternoon. Really quickly, you know, listen, I'm not going to give a Cowboys-Eagles pick for tonight, but it is week 1. I'll go ahead and give you a Super Bowl pick right now. I am going to take the Baltimore Ravens over the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl this year. Yeah, we don't talk a ton of NFL, but it's week 1. It's the opening day of the NFL. How am I not going to give out a Super Bowl pick? Okay. But listen, I look at the NFL right now. I go back to Baltimore in that AFC divisional game against Buffalo. They were the better team in that game. And Mark Andrews dropped 2 big passes on that final drive that would have put them in position to win. I know everybody hates Lamar Jackson. The bottom line is like, I don't know. Lamar was fine in that game. Josh Allen, I don't trust. I don't trust Sean McDermott in big games. And listen, I think there's a little too much negativity on the Chiefs right now. My counter to that would be, you know, are they going to be there in the end? I don't know. So I just bring it up. I think it's Baltimore's time. I think it's their year. I think the Chiefs is going to be interesting. We know Travis Kelce's basically going to be retiring after this year. What does it mean for the future of the team? I don't know. But I do think Baltimore goes on to win the Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia is beastly, man. They're so good across the board. Do worry about Jalen Hurts. Can he stay healthy for a full 2021 game season? Whatever. But just bring it up. That is your official AT Super Bowl pick. Ravens over Eagles in February. We'll see, by the way. We got a lot of time till February, but we'll see what happens. We still got a show to do, but I do hope everybody enjoys that Eagles-Cowboys banner reveal game tonight. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, a lot to still get to as Tuscaloosa turns, and frankly, as Tuscaloosa burns. Kalen Deboer, whoo, boosters are turning on him. New details about the buyout. Maybe, just maybe, Kalen Deboer, you know, he might not be as long for Tuscaloosa as we all expected. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So chat's a little bit of quieter today. Go ahead, drop your thoughts on week 2 in the chat, but also drop your thoughts on the state of Alabama football. That is right. I have a feeling this is going to become a pseudo daily segment on this show, but it is time to talk about the state of Alabama. Not the state, like the physical state, but the mental state of the Alabama football program. Should we just call this segment, as Tuscaloosa turns? Because it has certainly been an interesting week or so in Tuscaloosa. Listen, we've gone over the game. We don't need to reiterate everything that has happened. But we also know that, listen, in an offseason that Kalen Deboer and his staff told everybody that everything was going to be so different this season in Tuscaloosa. Transparently, everything kind of looked the same on Saturday, right? It's not just that you lost. It's the fact that you lost in the manner that you did. The fact that the defense looked lost and confused. The defense, not only lost and confused, but the effort was lacking. You didn't consistently run the football. You didn't even have a consistent game plan. And so it is clear that there is a lot of frustration right now in Tuscaloosa. And I think it's rightful. I said this the other day on the podcast, and, I think Alabama fans agreed. I think non-Alabama fans called me lame and corny and whatever. I said, Alabama fans get a negative, connotation on social media, and I get it. A little bit of a spoiled fan base. Listen, but they got to witness the greatest dynasty in the history of the sport. But I don't think they're wrong about how they feel about Kalen Deboer. It's not just that you lost. It's the manner in which you lost and the fact that there's no mental toughness, no physical toughness on the field. I think Bama fans have a right to be mad. Well, it's not just me, because apparently Bama fans are mad, and it was very interesting because on Wednesday, On3 put out a report that apparently Bama boosters are not taking this sitting down, okay? So obviously, look, every time a team takes a tough loss, you're always going to hear stuff, but I think it's noteworthy. Bama boosters are now doing interviews and basically saying what I said. It's not just that we lost. It is the manner in which we lost. It is who we lost to. It is the circumstances that we lost to. And it is coming off of an offseason where we were told things were going to be different. Now, the interview itself was with Chris Lowe and Andy Staples. It was behind a paywall. But since Andy Staples shared some of it on his Twitter, I think we can go ahead and share it here on this show. Here was part of the interview, courtesy of Andy Staples' Twitter account. Producer Matt, whenever you're ready, you can pop that up. This was a quote from the article. When we put a team out there, this was an Alabama booster. When we put a team out there that looks uninspired, like we have far too many times these past 2 years, and lose to teams that were clearly more talented than, that's when it becomes a problem. And it's not just a bunch of spoiled fans griping. That is exactly my point, and I agree with Alabama fans here. Listen, it's not about fans being spoiled. It's not about no one could replace Nick Saban. Nobody is asking Kalen Deboer to be Nick Saban. What people are asking of Kalen Deboer, can you have a team that is organized? Can you have a team that looks prepared? Can you have a team that doesn't embarrass itself week over week over week? Now, I know there were some great wins in year one, certainly Georgia at home, certainly LSU on the road, but it is embarrassing to go to Vandy, be completely unprepared and lose to Vandy. It is embarrassing to go to Oklahoma when the offense was a mess all year and you can't move the football and Oklahoma runs it all over you. And it is embarrassing that in week one, with 8 months to prepare, you look completely lost and confused. And I think it's especially frustrating because one thing we know about Nick Saban, you give him more than 1 week to prepare, a bye week, a college football playoff semifinal, a bowl game, a week one, basically lights out. Nick Saban did not lose very many games when he had more than a week to prepare. He didn't lose very many games, period, but he didn't lose very many games when there was more than 1 week to prepare because his team, whatever you thought about him, there were times that Nick Saban's team lost, but it wasn't because they were unprepared. It wasn't because they were undisciplined. Sometimes the other team just had better players. Okay. So anyway, bring it up because frustration is high. Boosters are turning on Kalen Deboer, I think rightfully so. And what's interesting, though, is the fact that I think we're all under this impression that, you know what, does it really matter? Who cares? Because even if we think Kalen Deboer is the right guy for the job, he's got that huge $70+ million buyout that essentially there's nothing we can do with, right? And so in my opinion, I think that's been another part of the conversation. Everybody's frustrated, but what's Alabama going to do? You can't pay a $70 million buyout in the NIL era, the rev share era when you're paying players. Well, apparently it might not be quite as crazy or quite as daunting as everybody thinks, because I mentioned Andy Staples did that article on Wednesday on his show, Andy and Ariana on the On3 network. They talked about this, and Andy Staples shared some very interesting details about Kalen Deboer's buyout. Keep in mind, not every buyout is created the same. Not every buyout, every penny is due the day the coach is fired. Let's just let Andy Staples explain the difference between Kalen Deboer's buyout and maybe some other buyouts in the SEC.
But if you're new here, the structure of the buyout is always more important than the amount of the buyout. The most prohibitive buyout in the SEC right now is Mark Stoops at Kentucky. It is not the most. It is about half of what Kalen Deboer's is. I would say the Stoops one, I think, is at $34 million if he did it after this season. The difference is the Stoops one is due fully within 2 months of you firing him. He's never getting fired like that. That is never going to happen. Nobody is going to pay that amount of money in a lump sum that quickly. Kalen Deboer's, on the other hand, is a monthly payment, equal monthly installments from when it happens through December 31st, 2031. When it happens like that, when it's set up like that, it becomes a line item. It becomes something you can plan for, something you can work around. Mm-hmm. That is why it's different. So you can talk about the amount all you want, but this is Alabama. If they are not satisfied, they will do something about it. It's not just because Nick Saban just coached there. It's because it's Alabama.
Great stuff from Andy Staples there. And I think just a beautiful explanation, beautiful relatively speaking, but I think an excellent explanation of how buyouts work and how every buyout is not created equal. Okay. I think everybody is under the impression that a buyout works in the manner of this. There's this much left on the contract. This is the buyout amount. If we fire you today, we have to write a check for you today. The most famous example of that is probably when LSU fired Coach O. If you remember, Coach O had that press conference where he said, "You're going to pay me how much right now?" He said, "What door do you want me to take out and how quickly do you want me to get out of here?" Basically, Coach O was like, if you're going to give me all $20 million that's owed to me right now, I'm out. Deuces, good luck, best of luck to everybody at LSU. That's not how most buyouts work. Now, apparently that's how Mark Stoops' buyout works at Kentucky. I know that's not what Kentucky fans want to hear, but that is not how Kalen Deboer's buyout works at Alabama. And because of it, I think it totally changes the dynamics here. Now, to be transparent, do I think he's getting fired tomorrow? Do I think he's even getting fired at the end of the year? No, I'll tell you what I actually think is going to happen in just a minute. But the counter to that is it on the table that if things go absolutely sideways, that he could be out sooner rather than later? Yeah, I think so. Because again, a $70 million buyout or $65 million buyout or whatever it is, it's a lot different when you have to pay all of it on the spot versus the fact that sometimes they're spread out. And in the case of Kalen Deboer, it sounds like if he is fired, let's just say hypothetically after the season this year, and I don't think it's going to happen, but let's work under that assumption. Alabama would pay his buyout over 6 full calendar years. Now, it's not going to be cheap. Not going to be cheap. And I'm not saying it will be cheap. But my counter to that is it's a lot better than paying $70 million with one paycheck, which I don't think is in the cards, as Andy Staples said. But can you afford to pay $8 to $10 million a year, somewhere in that neighborhood, for the next 6 years? Yeah, you can. You don't want to. You want Kalen Deboer to be the guy. You want it to work out. But if you have to do it, it can be done. And it can be done sooner rather than later. And oh, by the way, just because it's not done this offseason doesn't mean it can't be done next offseason when the buyout is, say, $58 million instead of $68 million or whatever it is this year. And so there is a very important difference between one buyout to the other because, again, at the end of the day with Kalen Deboer, you do not have to buy him out today. This is not the Coach O, what door do you want me to walk out and how soon do you want me out? He ain't getting all that money right away, and instead it would be spread out into literally next decade. And so I think it's in play. I think it totally changes the dynamics of the conversation. And very quickly, let me also say this about Kalen Deboer. I do think he'll survive, but I do think this proves if it goes poorly enough, I don't think anything is 100% certain. What I actually think will happen, since people, I don't want anybody misquoting me saying, oh, Torres, no. What I will say that I do think will probably happen is pretty straightforward. I think if the defense doesn't get figured out in a hurry, guess what? I think Kane Womack's going to be the fall guy, and I think probably he should be. I mean, listen, if you can't figure out how to stop a running quarterback, couldn't figure it out against Diego Pavia last year, Jackson Arnold last year, what am I blanking on? Thomas Castellanos this year. Like, you can't figure out how to stop a quarterback that can make plays with his legs. You probably can't be a defensive coordinator in the SEC. So in my opinion, it wouldn't shock me if Kane Womack ends up being the fall guy this year and that Kalen Deboer gets at least until the end of 2026 to try and figure things out. I do think, by the way, listen, say what you want about Kalen Deboer, but he and his staff are very media savvy. This offseason, they promised things would be different. If he survives into 2026, you know what next year is going to be. Well, just wait till you see Keelan Russell, right? Keelan Russell, the 5-star quarterback who is currently Ty Simpson's backup. That'll be the next thing if things go badly. Is just wait till next year. We'll just wait till next year with Keelan Russell. We'll get it figured out. He's the guy. This is the guy that we've been waiting on, whatever. So I just bring it up because I don't think anything is happening this year. But the counter to that, I'll also say this too, is that I think it's not a 0% chance. The buyout is more manageable than people realize. And here's the last part, is that all of a sudden, I'll also add this. Not only did Alabama not look good, but as we've discussed on the show, it's not just that Alabama didn't look good. It's that some of the teams that you kind of chalked up as wins, even as recently as like a week ago, 10 days ago before week 1, all of a sudden don't look like guarantees, right? LSU, I give them credit. They looked to me like the best team in college football last week. I know Ohio State's number 1. LSU, to me, had the best win and the best effort of week 1. Tennessee, I think Tennessee maybe upgraded a quarterback with Joey Aguilar. That is not a win at home, even in Tuscaloosa. By the way, the Auburn Tigers. I know everybody wanted to talk about Hugh Freeze's golf game over the summer. Well, guess what? Hugh Freeze's team looked more prepared, and Jackson Arnold, we know, is capable of beating the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we'll see what happens. But again, I think that buyout conversation is super important. Boosters are turning. Boosters are frustrated. But here's the counter. That buyout isn't nearly as crazy as everybody thinks. And I do think there is a scenario where if it came to it, Alabama could figure out a way to get out of Kalen Deboer's contract sooner than we expected. Before we get to the break, producer Matt, let's get to that super chat that I saw from the Outlaw College Football. I'll tell you this. Follow this guy on Twitter. You crack me up, buddy. I can't retweet a lot of what you say because you truly are an outlaw, but he had a great question with the super chat. By the way, we appreciate the super chat from Outlaw of College Football. Obviously, always appreciate support of the show. We do have a membership tier, by the way. Torres super fans, you can find it on our homepage. You want to support the show, you can always hit that membership tier, $5 a month. It's what it costs to buy a beer at the bar after a hard day of work on Friday. If you want to support the show, go ahead and check us out. Just click that join button. But let's get to Outlaw of College Football. He says, quote, "Do you think Deboer is tanking for the buyout like Jimbo did? Deboer's family never moved to Bama and still has a house up there. I assume that means in Washington State." I don't think Kalen Deboer's tanking, man, because, I mean, he could, listen, whatever we think about him, he could have been a legend at the University of Washington. He could have had a statue built. He could have had whatever. So why do you give all that up when, frankly, the money wasn't that different? We talked about the CBS report a few days ago where they talked about how Kalen Deboer had a contract on his desk, $9+ million a year at Washington. He's making 10 at Alabama. It wasn't to be at Alabama to just make money and get bought out. I think he really thought, I'm going to go to Alabama. The success we had at Washington is going to translate. And I think he's learning that the SEC is much, much, much tougher. So thank you to Outlaw College Football. Again, we always appreciate super chats. And if you want to join as a member, we'll do some special stuff for the members in the coming weeks and months. But we really do appreciate your support because we are an independent show. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to come back. We'll get to some more of your questions. And when we come back, though, also do want to go ahead and, by the way, Outlaw says he has a highly successful podcast, too. Check him out, Outlaw of College Football on Twitter. We're going to come back. No, we're heavy with college football. There was a very interesting college basketball story this week, though. Dan Hurley, did he contemplate retirement? Two-time national champion. Quick break. Discuss that next.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Firebox.com. That's Firebox.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Firebox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Firebox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Firebox, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Firebox.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. So here's the bottom line. Obviously, it's September. It's college football season, but I've always made a solemn swear that if we ever get an interesting basketball story, that we'll go ahead and discuss it here on the Aaron Torres pod, even if it's September, October, football season, whatever. Well, we certainly got one on Wednesday morning, and this was crazy. I woke up to this story. Arnie Spanier from Fox Sports actually sent me the story. But so Dan Hurley, later this month, first of all, Dan Hurley, I think if you're listening to this, you know who he is, two-time national champion, UConn Huskies, whatever, okay? So Dan Hurley, later this month, has a book coming out, and I think it's one of those leadership books and things of that nature, whatever, written with Ian O'Connor, famous author, famous writer, famous columnist, whatever. Well, I bring it up because with a month out until the book comes out, anyone who's ever written a book or knows about how the process works, you start releasing excerpts to different media outlets. And, the kind of hope is that, hey, maybe you put out something interesting, you create interest in the book, and hopefully once the book comes out, you sell a lot of copies, pre-orders, whatever. Well, I bring it up because there was certainly an interesting quote that dropped on Wednesday, came across my feed, and that quote was that apparently Dan Hurley was considering retirement after last season. Was it fact? Was it fiction? We'll discuss it in a minute. But producer Matt, you have the quotes. Now, to be clear, I don't normally share stuff. These quotes were shared with The Athletic. You know my policy. I don't share stuff behind a paywall. But this is from a book. It's clear that Dan Hurley wants these quotes out. It's clear that the publisher wants these quotes out. It's clear that Ian O'Connor wants these quotes out. And if you don't believe me, Dan Hurley literally released some of these quotes on his social media pages, so I don't feel so bad talking about it. But here is what Dan Hurley had to say about last season and the thought of retirement Go ahead, pop it up, Matt. He said, quote, I knew in my mind, this is after last season, I knew in my body, and I could just feel that I was completely cooked. This is from his book, just burnt. I didn't even know how I was standing. I stared at the office walls, muttering, conducting a brutal review of our season. I didn't build a strong enough roster. I wasn't a good leader. I let everybody down in Maui. I lost control emotionally at various points. I came in here some days sad and defeated when I needed to be positive and inspiring. He continues. Then I went through the self-lacerating what if. What if we played a little bit better in Maui? What if we hadn't blown that game against Seton Hall? What if we'd been a better seed than an 8 seed and hadn't had to face the number 1 team in the country in the second round? Who knows? He continued. This is where it gets interesting. It was unhealthy to be ruminating in this way. I was unhealthy. I desperately needed to get out of town, flee to my standard hideaway, Dorado Beach in San Juan. I needed to do some healing, not think about basketball for a few days, but that wasn't possible in this new era. The transfer portal and NIL deals made every college basketball player a free agent. So right after the tournament, I needed to be in my office in stores. If I left town right then, I wouldn't have had a team for the 2025-2026 season. And here's the money quote. At that point, I wasn't even sure that I would return for the 2025-2026 season. All right, a lot to dive into. Dan Hurley telling in his book that he considered retirement after last season. I will quickly share my thoughts, and I'll start by saying this. Do I believe that in his weakest moments, Dan Hurley questioned whether he was good enough to be doing this job? I do. Do I believe in his weakest moments he said, maybe I shouldn't be doing this job, maybe somebody could do it better? I do. Do I believe that Dan Hurley ever seriously considered not coaching the UConn Huskies in 2025-2026? Yeah, I do not. And I don't want to say this is all PR because I think Dan Hurley clearly went through a lot last season. I think it was a stressful season for him and everybody associated with him. But no, I don't think that Dan Hurley ever seriously considered retirement. Okay, so first of all, let me say this. Listen, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm not accusing anybody of lying. By the way, thank you, Matt. Make sure to follow our Torres on UConn page, Torres on UConn, for all your late-breaking UConn news. So first of all, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. But let's also remember, he is trying to sell a book. Ian O'Connor is trying to sell a book. The publisher is trying to sell a book. And so, again, they are going to put out the most salacious quote that they possibly can because at the end of the day, that is what is going to help them sell books. At the same time, do I actually believe that he was really going to leave UConn to take another job? I'm sorry, I just don't, okay? The bottom line is this. First of all, a couple things here. One, Dan, again, it's what I said a minute ago. Dan Hurley is a crazy high-achieving person, okay? Dan Hurley is someone that is a perfectionist that holds himself to an even higher standard than everybody around him. And as someone who has been in a Dan Hurley practice, I can promise you he holds everybody to an incredibly high standard. So when he feels like he's letting people down, I think he had what they call in psychological terms, they call it imposter syndrome. For people who don't know, whatever. Imposter syndrome is basically like where you question, am I good enough to be doing this? You could question it in your job. You could question it as a parent. You could question it as whatever, as a mother, as a father, as a son, as a husband, as a wife, whatever. And so do I think there was some imposter syndrome creeping in? I do. Do I think that there were times where he was like, I'm not good enough? I do. You know how I know? Because I think I'm pretty highly strung too. I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist too. And I think that at times I could be the exact same way. I could sit there and look at myself in the mirror and say, Torres, you're not good enough. Torres, you suck. Torres, that show sucked. Whatever. And so this notion that he didn't at any moment in time have those thoughts, of course we all do. Everybody does, especially high-performing people. And what I would also say with Dan Hurley, what I think made it especially tough was how tough last season was. And I think specifically with him, specifically with the way he's wired, and specifically, oh, by the way, remember that this is a guy that for 2 years basically had the answers to the test, right? Back-to-back national championships. It's easy to forget 2 straight national championships in which his teams, how about this? They won every single game by double figures. When you're that dominant for that long, you think you have all the answers. And I will say, I think Dan Hurley struggled last year. He said it in the 60 Minutes interview. He said, for a while, I was judging myself by if I don't win the national championship, I'm a failure. And he talked to, I believe it was Gino Auriemma, Tom Izzo, a couple others that were like, if that's how you're going to carry yourself the rest of your career, good luck, because that is an impossible standard to live up to. So I think in his weakest moments, it was probably something that he thought about. But do I believe he ever actually considered retirement? I'm sorry, I don't. Now, long term, is he at UConn for the next 30 years? I think that might be a little bit tough. I think the way that he is wired, he's full speed ahead. I think he's physically and mentally trained by the end of the year. And, I think the job is, he takes it very seriously. So I don't really have much more to add. I thought it was an interesting story, but do I think he ever actually considered retirement? I don't. By the way, I'll say this. If anything, I think he wanted to put together the best freaking roster that he possibly could, because that guy is a stud, just an absolute monster. All right. Really quickly, we got to get this in very quickly because it is that time of year, college hoops recruiting season, okay? And it's a really interesting time because, listen, we're all focused on football. I get it. But with big college football weekends come basketball recruiting. And this is a very interesting time in basketball recruiting because all the best high school players in America are taking all sorts of visits everywhere in the country. Generally on these Friday shows, we'll go ahead and kind of preview the weekend ahead, who's visiting where, what does it mean, North Carolina, UConn, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, whatever. But today I want to focus on one player specifically, the player you see on the screen right now, a player named Caleb Holt. Caleb Holt, 6'5", top 5 player in the class. I'll be totally transparent. He's one of my favorite players in this class because he's just one of those guys that really is capable and able to do pretty much anything on the court. And I thought it really showed in that Team USA summer U19 stuff where he's playing with AJ DeBonsa. He's playing with Koa Pete. He's playing with Mikel Brown Jr., and there were games where he scored a lot, where he scored 15, 18 points, whatever it was, shot the 3 ball well. But there were times where they didn't need him to score. There were times where he was a great defender. There was times where he was a spot-up shooter. There were times where he played different roles and did different things. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at this 2026 recruiting class, what I see is a kid in Caleb Holt that right behind Tyron Stokes, I think is really about as good as anybody in this class as far as long-term upside is concerned. I'd include a couple others. JJ Andrews, that's committed to Arkansas, I think is one. There's a few others, but I think Caleb Holt is right there. Well, I bring it up because his recruitment is one that we are absolutely, positively, unquestionably going to be talking about over the next couple weeks. He visited Arkansas last week. He's got visits to his home state schools. He's originally from beautiful Huntsville, Alabama. Big week for Huntsville, Alabama, by the way. Producer Matt from Huntsville, Alabama. Saw some rocket ship stuff. I don't really know what's going on with that. Also, the Auburn Tigers took care of Baylor Bears. So it's been a good week for Huntsville, Alabama, and producer Matt. But so Caleb Holt is from Huntsville. My guess is that Alabama and Auburn are going to be in the mix, but he visited Arkansas last weekend. He visited Kentucky this weekend. And I think we're going to start to get some real clarification with this recruitment in the coming days, frankly, let alone months. He does not strike me as a kid that's going to take 10, 12, like the Deron Rippey Jr. kid who's taken 12 official visits. I think he knows where he wants to go. I think this is going to be not a quicker recruitment, but a pseudo quicker recruitment. And it frankly wouldn't shock me if this became a Arkansas versus Kentucky, Cal versus Pope recruitment. As far as Kentucky this weekend, first of all, listen, we'll get all the reports Sunday night into Monday. It's going to go well because, one, every recruiting visit goes well. Two, Kentucky has a lot to sell, right? One, I think the campus is going to be buzzing. Football, big football game, Ole Miss this weekend. I know there's some frustration with Kentucky football, but it's still early in the season. Like if this was week 8 and Kentucky was struggling, it feels a lot different than an SEC opener in Lexington. So campus is going to be buzzing. And then I think from a basketball perspective, Mark Pope has a ton to sell to this kid. The system that they run, the way that they score, how good that offense looked when they were fully at 100% a season ago. And oh, by the way, the perfect role for Caleb Holt on this team. remember, a year from now, Otega-Oweh, who is their best returning player, is no longer going to be a Kentucky Wildcat. He runs out of eligibility, but Caleb Holt is almost a carbon copy of Otega-Oweh. 6'5", great shooter, NBA body, NBA athleticism, can get to the rim, can finish at the rim, defensive player as well. And so you look at Otega-Oweh, who I believe will be the SEC preseason player of the year. That is a heck of a blueprint for Mark Pope to sell. Hey, come here, be the next version of this dude who might be the SEC player of the year this year. And oh, by the way, there is a spot waiting for you because we need a replacement for him. So I think it'll be interesting. Like I said, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 days, I do think we probably get a little bit of clarification on where his recruitment stands. And more specifically, like, again, I think Kentucky is going to be a factor all recruitment long. And it's also worth noting this. Remember, he has a relationship with Mark Pope, as small as it may be. Producer Matt, if you have that graphic, go ahead, pop it up. Remember, Mark Pope was part of that Team USA on-court group that was coaching that team for a couple days during the summer. He wasn't a full-time coach, but he was part of that camp, okay? Well, I bring it up because this is what Caleb Holt said about Coach Pope, about Mark Pope. He said, Coach Pope, he was my on-court coach at Team USA. I got to play for him, and it was actually fun. He let me rock out. He was like, that's how it's going to be at Kentucky. Kentucky is definitely in the mix, high up. I mess with Mark Pope and everything. That quote via Kentucky Sports Radio. Bottom line is, listen, I'm not, Gen Z. I don't have all the lingo and all the slang and all the this and all of that. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on UK account for late-breaking Kentucky news. Also, if you need tickets to the game on Saturday against Ole Miss, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off. But as far as Caleb Holt is concerned, when he says, Coach lets me rock out, I mess with Coach Pope, that's nothing but a good sign. Conversely, what I'll also say is this. I do think John Calipari made a big impression last weekend in Fayetteville. I know it's one weekend. I know every visit goes well, but I think they got a great recruiting pitch at Arkansas as well. Remember, John Calipari, Arkansas, preseason, in my opinion, top 10 team, right up there with Kentucky and Florida's SEC favorites. But, one, besides the fact that Calipari is the one and done NBA whisperer, all of that, they're going to need bodies specifically in the backcourt next season at Arkansas. Darius Acuff, almost certainly going to be a one and done. Carter Knox feels to me like he's probably going to be a two and done. Both of those guys will probably be in the NBA next year. DJ Wagner, does he decide to come back for a fourth year, or does he just say, I've played 3 years of college basketball, I'm ready to be a professional and start that journey? Malik Thomas could potentially be a one and done if things go well. So they're going to need bodies in that backcourt, and Caleb Holt can step in and be that guy. All reports are that Caleb Holt had a great visit to Arkansas last week. And so I just bring it up because, listen, Nate Oates and Alabama are going to have their say in a couple weeks. Bruce Pearl and Auburn are going to have their say in a couple weeks. But the more that I look at this recruitment, the more that I really am starting to think, is it possible that it's John Calipari versus Mark Pope, that it's Arkansas versus Kentucky? I do, and I think we will start to find out a little bit more in the coming days. Caleb Holt arriving in Lexington on Friday. All right, I'll tell you what, I got to go ahead and get out of here. I just some stuff going on, whatever, no big deal. But make sure you're subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Truly do appreciate your support. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you, how about this, $20 off your first purchase. And thank you, as always, to Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino for their support. All lines provided by Circa Sportsbook. If you're on that Kentucky-Tennessee border, check out the new Circa Sportsbook, Mint, Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. Got to run. Appreciate your support. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Fun show. Be back Sunday morning. Recap of week 1. Aaron Torres.